This episode is presented by Mercury, the fintech that simplifies how more than 200,000 businesses operate.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Found, the podcast where we bring you the stories behind the startups. This week, we're changing it up and bringing you along with us to TechCrunch Disrupt. I'm Dominic Midori-Davis, and you're about to hear a conversation I had with Erin and Sara Foster, along with their business partner, Phil Schwartz, an advisor at Oversubscribed Ventures. Across their careers, the Foster sisters have co-founded the clothing line Favorite Daughter, co-led creative for Bumble and Bumble BFF, and currently co-host a podcast together. Erin Foster even created the top Netflix show Nobody Wants This, starring Kirsten Bell. But in this conversation, we get into how they made their pivot into VC, the type of investments that excite them the most, and how they balance all the different facets of their careers. Let's dive in. Welcome to the official TechCrunch Disrupt After Pod. I am here with Erin, Sara, and Phil. We just got off stage with our panel about consumer culture, and then I think I threw another C word in there. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us again.
Oh, but I just realized that on stage, Phil, you did not give us a story about like a mishap in your career.
Oh yeah, give it to us.
What I would say is that like at Tinder, as much of a success story as Tinder is, we did so many things wrong. It's funny, one of those things like literally happened in the middle of us working together. We were filming a bunch of content. We wanted to make Tinder more female friendly, and literally in the middle of us creating the content, the day that we showed up to film the content, there was this very negative article about Tinder, and just because somebody...
And specifically about women.
Specifically about women.
What was it?
I don't remember the specifics.
It was like some things that Sean Rad had said.
Oh.
In an interview.
But it did not play well.
Yeah.
It was counter to what we were trying to accomplish at the company and with our content that we were creating. And so we had to figure out a different path. And eventually the content that we shot, we never released because we couldn't find the right path to do it after that article came out. So, boy, it teaches you a lot about being humble and just being more intentional and thoughtful about the messaging you put out there.
You went from being an operator to a venture investor.
Also true. That's true. And I think for better or worse, when you go through this stuff, you build empathy for founders that are going through these things on a daily basis. These things happen constantly to founders.
Yeah, you never know what's going to like sneak up and be the wrong thing to say, or it's going to come out the wrong way, or, clickbait.
Yeah, I know. Empathy is a really, really big thing that a lot of founders, a lot of investors, I don't know, do you feel like working in investment do you feel like a lot of investors understand or have a lot of empathy for founders? Sometimes I talk to founders and they talk about how different investors are who have never been founders. It's like they don't really understand the journey that they go through.
I would say, Phil, that you are. I mean, I think that like a lot of investors are kind of catastrophists, right? Like when things are going bad, you're just like, okay, well, like let's already just write this one off. And you really hunker down and get so in the weeds on so many levels with these founders that...
Well, it's nice of you to say. No, look, there's no wrong way to sort of get into venture. The only way I know how to have gotten into it is through the path that I took, which is to come from the operating side and into the venture side. And I think because of that, I just naturally have this empathy for founders. But a lot of investors never experience the operating side. And as a result, all they want to do is get updates every quarter on when things are up and to the right. And that is not helpful for founders, ultimately.
But Phil's very good at like talent management. He's very good at working with founders and helping them feel seen and heard and saying things with the right tone. Sometimes Sara and I don't have the right tone, and Phil really does.
It's nice of you to say. And I would say I learned that not just from going through sort of experiences on the operating side myself, but my partner, Sam Yegan, at Corazon has been a founder, has been in the trenches, and I've seen the way that he interacts with founders. And it comes from a very empathetic place because he just wants them all to win. And he has, a specific approach to helping guide them through that. And that, I think, can only happen when you've been on the other side. But yeah, I've seen a lot of investors not provide that empathy, and it's painful for founders to deal with it.
I mean, we learned this when we were 5 years old. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. There's a way to deliver. Things aren't going so well. Like you need to shake it up. You need to pivot. You need to retreat. We know this, right? But it's easier said than done. And I think it's something that you do very well, which is why founders love working with you. They feel a little too comfortable. They text him a lot. They text him
a lot.
And on stage, you gave a lot of credit to Whitney at Bumble. And so I wanted to know if there were any other investors or founders that you really look up to, especially as you started entering startup and VC a lot more.
I mean, really, Whitney is our main standout because she brought us into a lane we never existed in. And she didn't just bring us in, but she continued to champion us and teach us along the way. And then support us after in our investment ventures. I mean, she really is the standout for me, you know, because there's a personal connection. What's another founder
She's
we
the
really look up
standout.
to?
You know, I think we talked about Kim a little bit on
yeah,
stage.
Kim.
And I think that she gets referenced so much just because for so many reasons. But I think people forget she has built what was the latest valuation for Skims? $5 billion business.
Crazy.
And not because only she's Kim Kardashian, because the product is exceptional. The customer experience.
But also she's the customer. Like she wears it, she shows it.
Yes. And I think
She understands that category.
yes, and no one can compare to her. It's not, not many people have 300 million followers and the kind of following that she has, but she's done it all right as a founder. And I don't think she gets enough. I mean, she gets obviously so much respect, but I think people forget what she has built, and I look at it and I really admire it.
No, yeah, it's definitely been interesting to see the narrative around Kim specifically change this past decade.
Rightfully so.
Because, yeah, I know a lot of people would obviously bully, mean, all these horrible things to say. But now she is really well regarded
She's
as a
having the last
businesswoman.
laugh.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And it's not an accident. There are a lot of really famous people with a lot of followers, with a lot of clout, whose businesses go under.
That's definitely true. Yeah. Wow. But it's really, really interesting as well because, on stage, Phil, you spoke about stacking the deck when it comes to creating buzz and relevance. And I know we spoke about the oversaturation of the market. Not everybody has 300 million followers. You don't know how to make things go viral. I guess, yeah, we said on stage that it's kind of impossible to answer this question. Is there no recipe at all in terms of getting consumers to look at a product, or
They don't have us. Talk about Batch, because you could talk about it.
Listen, I think there is a recipe. I think the flaw is in thinking that there is a sure thing. But I do think there's a recipe that increases your odds of success dramatically. Yeah, like our company Batch, one of the portfolio companies of Oversubscribed and Corezone, is a marketplace for group experiences. So you can plan and book group experiences, still an unsolved sort of large problem on the internet. And Batch is really stepping in to solve it. They've had over 1 million parties plan their party on Batch to date. And the word of mouth is insane. So how do they do that? They're very good at social. They're very good at TikTok, but they're also just building something that's inherently viral. They are creating a product that you bring in a user. That user then goes and recruits 5, 6, 10, 20 different users to join them. And then they have people around the table like Oversubscribed and Corezone that really understand the consumer, understand marketplaces. And so they've done as good a job stacking the deck as you can do. And they're having success because of it. But it's not, it would be a lie to say that there's an automatic way to make something work. There are so many things that can go wrong in a company. You can make a bad product. You can disappoint enough customers. You can...
Death by 1,000 cuts. It's all small little mistakes that all add up.
One of my favorite Taylor Swift songs, yes.
Okay, all right.
Swift line?
Death by 1,000 Cuts is a great song.
From the Lover era. Okay.
From the Lover era.
Boom.
Oh my God, Phil.
My
Okay,
daughter's
are
going to
you
be
a
so
Swiftie?
happy that I brought
didn't
this
realize
up.
you had
I'm going
such
to be...
good taste.
Are you a
Music.
Swiftie? Wait
Yeah.
a minute now.
Huge Swiftie.
Okay,
Huge
what's your
Swiftie.
era? What era are you?
It's a great question. I think I like the...
That was a brilliant album.
Folklore
Folklore.
love.
It's only folklore for me.
Yeah.
I like Folklore also. I very much like her acoustic stuff. So I tend to listen to live performances or acoustic performances
Yeah.
because I think I assume that's how she wrote it. And
Yeah.
I love listening to it that
Well,
way.
what's
So
the one that has style and all that?
Oh,
Songs?
1989.
Okay, that's one.
But you know,
Great album.
speaking of Swift, that's another incredible businesswoman who I think people are now looking at in terms of
Absolutely.
before they were saying all these crazy things. And now it's she has also built an ecosystem that feeds upon
there's
itself.
kind of a common theme here, which is people who continue to stay being themselves, no matter how many people hate on them and tell them that they're doing it wrong. And they continue, both those examples, they are exactly today who they were when people were hating on them and telling them to be someone different. And they stayed true to themselves.
Yeah, definitely a big business lesson to be learned there.
Taylor Swift is a force.
Also, people love and love positivity. At the end of
They
the
do.
day, people love and they love feeling good. And it's not that
Wait,
complicated.
what's that in relation to?
Like the show. I think the show is successful because people just want to
Yes.
see healthy love. They want to feel good. Everything doesn't always have to be toxic and complicated and ugly and nasty. And I think Taylor Swift, young girls, if it wasn't for all the young
Right.
girls, she wouldn't be Taylor Swift. It's the young girls gravitating to the positivity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people like to clown on young girls
Yeah.
as a consumer base. I was in the One Direction fandom. They did not take us seriously at all.
You want those young girls.
Yeah, now you're the consumer.
And now we're the consumer. Exactly.
Yeah.
More from this conversation right after a quick break.
It's time banking did more than hold your money. Now it can. With Mercury, you can pay bills in seconds, close the books faster, and even send invoices. Not only does Mercury do away with a patchwork of tools, it eliminates guesswork, giving you complete and accurate visibility into your business finances, all from one account. Apply in minutes at mercury.com.
I know you guys probably get asked this question a lot, but what is it like working with family? Like, how do you divide responsibilities? How did you know who was going to do what, do where? And just overall, what is it like working with each other?
I mean, I think Erin and I have really clear distinctions. We have really clear similarities and really clear differences.
But it took us a long time to figure out what those are.
Yeah. Well, you're a writer. I've never been a writer. I've never wanted to be a writer.
No,
well, there was a minute when I did try to write.
She sent me some scripts.
Yeah.
Some dialogue ideas.
Yeah.
They weren't bad.
Yeah, no. Pretty good, actually.
They were pretty good. No, but I mean, in Favorite Daughter and different businesses and investments and stuff, I think for a long time we were bumping up against each other, trying to figure out what our own personal contributions would be so they didn't step on each other. And now today, I think we're in a really comfortable place where we really feel good about, I'm in the writer's room 5 days a week on the show for months and months. And then on set, Sarah has to pick up a lot of slack for me. She has to do a lot of these investor meetings, a lot of the updates with Phil. I'm not there for any of them. And we're still 50-50 partners. And so we make a decision. We're not splitting things up based on the amount of time put into something.
There's no you have been around, so I'm docking your pay. I mean, It's like we're 50-50 in almost everything we do. When she wins, I win. When I win, she wins. It's all the same shit.
It's tricky, but it's like any other relationship. If you work on it and you have a central goal in mind, which is to continue working together, you figure it out.
And I think too, when you work together as non-family members, it's very easy to be like, I quit. I'm out of here. I quit. I'm going to go work at this company, or I'm going to go do this. When you're family, especially sisters, you're not going anywhere. So you kind of are forced to deal with it.
Yeah, you
and
have to
face
figure it out.
You got to figure it out.
You're going to see each other at Thanksgiving.
Exactly. Yeah. Unless you want to be estranged.
I would add, obviously not being part of the family, I would just add, having observed this, two things. One, I think people from the outside that don't know them super well think they're very similar. And in fact, they're not very similar. But I love that about them. And I guess the second piece, which is related, is I assume because you're sisters and everything, there is no filter on conversation. And I think when you get in a non-family business or in a large company or whatever, everything is filtered. And that's part of the reason that things go bad at companies, because nobody really wants to say what they really think. And they have none of that.
Competitiveness. In a company, let's be honest, you're kind of competing. You're kind of okay, everyone wants that promotion, and usually one person is going to get that promotion. For us, we don't compete. I'm happy for her success. It's all the same. You know what I mean? So I think when you remove that element, I think a little healthy competition is good. But unfortunately, I think women have been really pit against each other in the workplace because there aren't that many positions. So when you remove that from our relationship, that also makes things a little bit more healthy.
You guys are doing so many things at one time. And I like asking founders this because you always get a different answer each time. How do you take care of your mental health, balancing all of these different things? How do you focus? How do you unwind?
We have a lot of really good people around us.
But also for myself at least, I really prioritize a work-life balance. So I am very comfortable saying to someone, I'm going to get to that tomorrow. I'm about to watch Love is Blind with my husband.
Ooh, season 7?
I mean, the season's not that good, but I really like spending time watching reality TV in bed with my husband. That's how we connect. And I'm not willing to compromise and not have that because I'll then lose my sanity. So I do think that people have to be comfortable. We are too available. And 50 years ago, people were clocking out at 5 p.m., 6 p.m. And then you're not expected to deal with work until the next morning when you go back to work. And we're available 24 hours a day.
They had your office line.
Yes.
There was no email. That's so
No one's calling
true.
your house at night being like, hey, did you look at that thing I printed or faxed to you? And so we're too available. So I do think people need to be more comfortable prioritizing their personal life so that they can work smarter and instead of harder.
Yeah, I never leave my house at night. I don't go anywhere. I literally don't go anywhere. That's how I deal with my mental health. I put a face mask on and I don't leave my house.
But you do have to have a boundary. I'm a new mom. I'm in a writer's room. I've been in writer's rooms before with other moms where someone else is like, okay, guys, let's order dinner and figure it out tonight. And I would say, sorry, she has a 3-year-old at home. Let her go home and be with her kid for bath time. This is not life and death. We can figure this out tomorrow morning. But you're going to have a happier person sitting in front of you tomorrow if you let her go home and give her daughter a bath.
Yeah.
It's common sense. You got to be with your family and with your partner and with your kids so that you can be available to your work without being resentful.
That's a good point in a team environment. You got to think about the team. When you're one person in a team of 10, which is normal, right? At startups and stuff, you got to think about the team. That's a really good point.
I also think people often confuse productivity with just time spent.
Yeah.
And like, that's not the same thing. And people think it's the same thing all the time. They're
It's
like,
so
I'm
funny.
here at my desk all the time. And
Simon and I were just talking about this yesterday. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
But Simon was just saying to me yesterday, we were talking about this, and he said, when someone says to me who works for me, like, I spent 12 hours doing that, I look at them and go, well, you shouldn't have. That should have taken you 1 hour. That's nothing to be proud of that it took you 12 hours. You shouldn't be proud of the amount of time you put in something, but be proud of the results.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Have you seen, you're working in a writer's room out in Hollywood. Do you see a lot more people drawing those type of boundaries and having them be respected?
Yeah, and you know what? It happens more from women. Like women are better at setting the boundaries because we are good at prioritizing home life and work-life balance,
It's just new that women have been allowed to say that. Now it has to be respected, or, there's going to be like an op-ed written. That's new. It used to be women would say, I have to go home, and they'd be like, you're fired.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
So
we're in a different time where we can speak out a little bit.
Ooh, I kind of have a hot, like a weird
Spicy question?
Spicy question. I know, right? Okay. So something that is always spoken about, especially with female founders, is the way that the media treats them. And so I really wanted to know your thoughts on how the way the media has treated female founders has changed over time, and if you think it's gotten any better.
Well, Erin and I don't want to say started our career because we did a lot of things before, but when we pitched our first TV show, the one network we wanted to be at said, we'll never buy a show from those girls, but we would never turn down taking a meeting with two hot girls. That was sort of our first introduction.
And I was like, oh my God, you think we're hot?
Yeah, Erin was excited. No,
what I said was like, great, I love being underestimated because I think that's a superpower, but it can also be hard to overcome. And I think that no matter what, women are always going to be viewed differently than we should be and than we want to be. And I do think that we're doing a much better job of taking advantage of the opportunity that, the internet will turn on people really quick these days. So in some ways it's really annoying, and in other ways it protects certain classes of people. And I think like as women, keeping people a little scared is kind of a good thing because they can move out of our way so that we can really like come into our power. But in general, I would say we were having a conversation again in the writer's room about a guy who hadn't done a great job at something, and everyone in the room was going, well, he was going through this, or well, this happened or that happened. And it's like, imagine making that many excuses for a woman. Imagine not just saying, well, she was bad at her job. Like, we don't get as many excuses.
And we are almost out of time. But then I just realized that, Phil, did you tell us how you decompress?
It's a good question. I exercise a lot every morning religiously, and I try really hard to like get to every single thing my kids have. So like, they have a football game, they have a volleyball game, they have a softball game, whatever. I try to go to every single one of them and not look at my phone while I'm there. And, that, like you said, it's increasingly hard. Like, we are reachable 24/7. And so I think it takes discipline, and it takes like a real effort to not do that. We have dinner at home together as family, and my phone is off during dinner. So it's the little things, but
that feels big, honestly. That's hard to do,
hard
commit
to
to not being on your phone during dinner and volleyball
It's
games.
actually huge.
Volleyball games are long, and they can be really boring.
And you know that you're like being present as a parent, that helps your mental health, because there's nothing like the guilt of feeling like you're not showing up as a good parent that can really deplete your mental health. So I think that makes sense.
Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you, Dom.
I guess I have to ask what's next for everybody.
Oh God, I keep saying the same thing. I sound super repetitive, but there's nothing next. We just need to keep building on what we've already started. Like, I talk a lot about hustle culture and everyone feeling like they have to do 1,000 things. Now we just need to really lean into what we already have, I think. Fun too.
Fun too.
That's well said. I think we're open for business at Oversubscribe and at Corazon. We're looking for new investments always. And, we're really excited about the future.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Dom.
Found is hosted by myself, TechCrunch senior reporter Becca Skutak, alongside senior reporter Dominic Midori-Davis. Found is produced by Maggie Stamets with editing by Kell. Our illustrator is Bryce Durbin. Found's audience development and social media is managed by Morgan Little, Alyssa Stringer, and Natalie Kreisman. TechCrunch's audio products are managed by Henry Pickavet. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week.